evening, good afternoon, Ramadan Kareem for my viewers. It is Shirley with Spirits of Matter, and I'm on a Study Life with Me episode where I look right now at the cycle between Uranus and Pluto on a mundane level from a historical perspective, political, social, scientific, and we'll see what comes up. So I am recording now an episode on the square between Pluto and Uranus. So um, I'd like to go to the most recent, although I can't ignore this 158 in the 1111 time. What happened this time? I'm just capturing this. This is in year 1058. Pluto was in Aquarius. You know what? Let's do something unpredictable. Pluto was in Aquarius, Uranus was in Scorpio. So, but before I do this, I want to delve right to the current planets that I always do because I want you to see the vantage point of where am I looking at right now? How do the planets align for me when I'm broadcasting and when I'm beginning this episode? So it's like the inception chart, kind of. Um, this is a Mars day and a Saturn hour. So Saturn, of course, deals with time, with history, and look, I picked the distant history, uh, um, almost millennia ago date to start looking at an aspect between two outer planets, Uranus and Pluto. Um, and it's also interesting because Mars rules Scorpio and Aries. Uh, Pluto is modernly associated with Scorpio, and Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius. Pluto is now in Capricorn, 29, the anaretic degree, looking 300 years back. And Aquarius, where Pluto is about to ingress, is also modernly associated with Uranus. So we have this Pluto Uranus also being um mentioned or fractalized with Mars and Saturn. And this brings me to the point where I might see how Mars and Saturn are fractals of Pluto and Uranus in a way, and we might see certain fractals, the structure of fractals, whether in mathematics, maybe mathematical discoveries that are now associated with um, how we computed fractals, maybe the concept of fractals, a cosmological concept of fractal universe. Those are all things that can come up. This is my prediction for this episode. Just by the merit of this being my vantage point, Mars is now in Gemini, 28 degrees, Saturn is in Pisces. A notion, how do we segment time, local time versus universal time? That is also local time, universal time, and severing, sectioning time. Okay, what the units of time, we may have discoveries or changes in the units of time at the time. Um, what else do we have here? The moon is just separated from a conjunction with Neptune, also with my ascendant, so with the midheaven on my ascendant, so this accentuates me, the broadcaster, doing something. And here the midheaven is in the ninth house, so me, the broadcaster, teaching about the world, the cosmology, and something that is historical, Saturn here in Pisces in the ninth house. Whole sign speaking, the ascendant is ruled by the moon. So we can see the ruler of the ascendant, the moon, is in the ninth house, conjuncting Neptune, an outer planet that sextiles Pluto. Okay, so tending to Pluto, and is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is in the Mars ruled sign, separating from Chiron, and is also ruled by Neptune. And what's in this Pisces sign, there is also Saturn. So definitely, the moon is signifying somebody that talks about all these ninth house related teachings, philosophies, religion, and perhaps across history. And I'm just a part of this big picture. Mm. So let's see what comes up. Without further ado, the chosen study topic for today is, can I know I did it. Here it is. The square aspect between Uranus and Pluto. So I'm going to look into history and what happened when Uranus and Pluto squared. And I'm going to look really back in history. I just found this 11:11 on November 20, 11:11 hour. And this is Julian time, like Julian time. So we had this square between Pluto and Uranus at the time, 23rd degree. It was co-present with the Sun, Mercury in retrograde, and Mars in Scorpio. Pluto was at the time in Aquarius, so right where it was today. So we have another. Pluto is about to ingress into Aquarius, so it's a good time to look at what happened when Pluto and Uranus were having an intercourse, dramatic or harmonious, and in this case perhaps more frictional, when Pluto was in Aquarius. Here, Pluto is in the 23rd degree of Aquarius, so it won't be in the 23rd degree of Aquarius before I think 2030, I don't know, 2038 or 2039 or so. Um, but that can, and we have the square relations between Scorpio and Aquarius that are being lit. Uranus with Scorpio, occult knowledge, hidden knowledge, revolution in. There can always some sort of sexual revolution. There can be maybe some sort of protectives, like to keep pregnancy. Something new, a new way to prevent pregnancy or to control basically the genitals. This can also mean like certain kinks around that. Um, Sexual history, I don't know. Like definitely not back all that way back. Um, Scorpio can be about, nowadays we call it intelligence, crime investigation, or it can also be a technological way to unfortunately torture people in investigation. Um, on a scientific level, Scorpio, scientific level. Like Scorpio is narrow and deep. Um, Still waters, wells, looking into wells, technology, or maybe technology to pull water from the well or to dig up wells, digging deep into the ground. Caves, some technology around mining, that can evolve mining not by the merit of minerals. Although Saturn is retrograde here opposite in Uranus, so there can be around something around mining, around minerals, digging deep into the earth using some sort of technological devices. With the sun here, it can be related to light. It may be that they're using flashlight to dig deep into the soil and bring minerals, or look for water deep in the ground. Um, yeah, that's for Uranus, and of course they didn't discover neither Pluto nor Uranus back then. So the vantage point that I'm looking at is like Uranus and Pluto probably were there. This is where they're predicted to be, and this is the hidden impact that they had on Earth if it was felt on Earth. So this is a very, when we look all that way back into history with just outer planets that last for a generation in a sign, 2 generation tops, then Yeah, but on the other hand, if you only use the seven traditional planets, that would be even more ridiculous to do. Pluto in Aquarius. Does Pluto in Aquarius? So Pluto in Aquarius. There can definitely be the way that those technological or digging into the ground, looking into the ground, mining, or sexual revolution of some sort have an impact. Maybe gay laws, gays, gender, like how was gay people perceived? I don't know. And that has a certain impact on the decentralization of whatever was institutionalized back then. So there's a sort of the calling for maybe democracy of the police. I don't know. Decentralization of, or alternatively controlling the people, the structure of living, maybe the way that people live, um, the country state, because we had the polis was the country state. I don't remember history all that long, so this is pure prediction. It's very nice. Um, this is where I allow myself to be stupid, and then I learn with you. So, if you think about the polis as the nation state, where this was the country, yeah, so the regime was about the polis, then perhaps uh, due to water residues or the lack of, or we finding new sources of water that's coming from deep in the earth, then we can have new settlements. And now there is a political structure that needs to be decentralized, that needs to be, because if you are a couple of people who are unsatisfied living in the polis and you dig into the ground, you go a couple of kilometers where you dig deeply into the ground or you form caves in a new place, now you have a new polis. Okay, now you can decentralize. You have a place to stay. You have water. You have shelter, and now you have a place to stay. And so you begin to gain political power. So, and by the way, recently we had the BBB party in Netherlands of agriculture people who had lands. So they formed a party because nobody represented them. And they are considered far right simply because they want to grow crops. So on the one hand, it's on them to prove that they will not enslave people in their lands. On the first hand, it's also a good thing because they are a force that is pushing against the abolishing of crops across Europe and the world. Okay, so the farmers became a middleman that provide food for us because they own lands and they want to grow crops. So they want to do something for with the land that feeds people. Yeah, but that can also yield another point of power that it will be on them to prove they do not enslave people in their farms. Um, so I predict that to be a change of settling that is also political and is due to the ability to discover or discovery using technological means or new technologies that allow us to dip into the ground and find new sources of wells, as well as new ways to dig in caves and shelters. All these holes, wormholes that you can reside in, and there can also be some sort of sexual revolution. Okay, I don't know what. Now let's look at history. So 20 November 1058. 20 November 1058. And the ability to just have this episode is so not a given, right? 20 November. So as long as we can make those, we better. 1058. What happened in 20, not 19, not 19, 10, 1 0. 1 0, please. I don't even have that. General Assembly is obviously not from. No? Okay, 158 planetary meeting. Okay. When I say something in Hebrew, I'm really surprised. Delhi. So it's a decision. Calendar, detailed new month. What happened? Oh, termine der November Okay, well, it's in German. I do know a bit German, but I don't know. Let's work my German. Fanfares des Faubourgs. All Termine vom, this is 29th to October 106. What the heck? I think I just ran into an application that shows something. This is the calendar. So 20 November was a Sunday. Here it shows a Saturday. Um, yes, a year. What happened to that year? Okay, 2058. Oh, this is so funny. 1058, 20 November 1058 in history. You know what? Let's just do November 1058 in history. What happened in November 1058? Oh, Malcolm III of Scotland. It was the King of Scotland from 1058 to 1093. And let's look at Malcolm III of Scotland. Who was King of Scotland from this year, and nicknamed Big Head, Great Chief. Malcolm, long reign of 35 years, preceded in the beginning of the Scoto-Norman Age. So there's his Henry the First of England and Eustace the Third of Bologna, were his son-in-laws, making him the maternal grandfather of Empress Matilda, William Adeline, and Matilda of Bologna. All three of them were prominent in English politics during the 12th century. So, quite an important key figure. His coronation was on the 25th of April. His reign was from 17 March until November 1093, until 13 November 1093. So we don't have the 20 November, but we do have the 1058. So that means earlier this year. So we may have it in other charts, but let's look. Issues. House Dunkeld, Duncan, one of Scotland. So he did not extend over the full territory of modern Scotland. Many of the islands and the land north of the river Ochiel were Scandinavian, and the south of the Firth of Forth. There were numerous independent, semi-independent realms, including Kingdom of Strathclyde and Bambur. And it is not certain what if any power the Scots exerted on Malcolm's accession. Okay. Over his reign, he led at least 5 invasions into English territory, and he secured the position of the lineage that ruled Scotland until later 13th century. So, very key figure all in all about his reign. So let's look at his early reign, because this is our square between Pluto and Uranus. If the Ordalic Vitalis is to be relied upon in the time of Edward the Confessor, Malcolm was betrothed to the English kingswoman Margaret, and it is possible that this happened when he visited in 1959, so this 1 year after the square. So it is within, by the way, it is within the square, just not direct aspect, okay? So this particular marriage between him and this, Margaret, This is so funny saying that, in 2023, this Margaret, which was probably a very important king that everybody was, bowing to, this Margaret, this Margaret woman, um, and Sun in Taurus. Yeah. Um, they didn't stop the Scots from plundering Lindisfarne in, you know, 1063, so 3 years later. Okay, so we have an important marriage happening, not something that I can directly delineate, but they will have effect over the change in the relation between political entities. That was not unusual. Marriage would be how you make peace in international, politics, and marriage would be how, um, yeah, how you create allies. So um, I don't see that as anything unusual to history. It's just one of those marriages. 1085. Marriage to Margaret. Let's see. Maybe there's something here. It's 1069. That's not really useful for. If you want to read more about that, then but depiction in fiction. He appears in Shakespeare's Macbeth as Malcolm. Execution of the former Thane of Cawdor. Macbeth then enters to congratulate him for his victory. Appears as a guest. The married life of Malcolm III and Margaret has been the subject of 3 historical novels. A Godly Pearl, Malcolm's Canmore Peril, so Pearl, Seeing Morning Star. They focus on court life in Dunfermline, and Margaret helping to introduce Anglo-Saxon culture in Scotland. So this is more the woman here, or the queen, basically, helping to introduce Anglo-Saxon culture in Scotland. I'm sorry, I don't see how does that relate to any delineation of what I'm looking at. So I'm not going to invent. I'm not going to write theories on the data. I just don't know how to delineate that. It looks important, but I don't see how it directly relates to anything I'm researching at this episode. That would be fascinating. So we'll just try and see what else happened. There is Casimir the Restorer. He was... Okay, so he died on 28 November 1058. That is an important death. So it was a Polish... he was the Duke of Poland from 1040 until his death in 1058. So this is an important death of someone that I guess would have implications on the kingdom or the borders of the kingdom. Casimir was the son of Mieszko II Lambert de Richeza of Lotharingia. He is known as the Restorer because he managed to reunite parts of the Kingdom of Poland after the period of turmoil. Again, this happened when he was alive. So we're looking at his death. So this is important, but this would only be leading to what happens during the square, what happens when he died. So he conquered Silesia and Pomerania. I think about the dogs Pomeranians. However, he failed to crown himself king of Poland mainly because of internal and external threats to his rule. Okay, relevant to this, let's look at his death. This is the restoration. Okay. In 1054, in Quedlinburg, the emperor that ruled that Silesia was to remain in Poland in exchange for a yearly tribute of 117 kilograms of silver and 7 kilograms of gold. This is important because when we talk about mining, we talk about minerals and how minerals are made by magma. And so, even though this happens 3 years before the square, we can see how that can lead to something. Because if on an international level, I say, okay, your country and my country, um, or this part remains in your country. Let's say I want to conquer your country because it has minerals, right? Natural resources. Or coinage, it depends on not just a coinage. And I should do a whole other episode of gold and silver. But I say, okay, you can keep this region. I'm not going to conquer you. I just want uh, a certain quantity of those things that, I don't want to run a war. This is what I want. If you give me that, then I'm okay. I will not threaten war. I just need that for my commerce. I need it for my wealth as a nation so that I would not have to go to war. And they made this agreement. Now, obviously, when you mine, okay, it 117 kilograms of silver and 7 kilograms of gold does not sound like much, but think about if you have a gold ring or if you have a silver ring, you can try to think how much it weighs. Just put it and see how much it weighs. And now think about 7 kilos. What it takes to mine these 7 kilos, what it takes to process these 7 kilos, because you don't just bring rocks, right? Maybe you do. I don't know what was the details of this agreement. But what happens when you run out of minerals? What happens where it's more difficult to find this gold? What happens when it's more difficult to mine this silver? You have to go to another place. But what happens with the region? Many things can happen. Okay, one is like, okay, we no longer have this. Now the other country says, oh, because our duke died 1058, because our duke died, now you want to violate this? No, we're going to go to war. And then lo and behold, they genuinely did not have the minerals, like they didn't have the place to mine. And other things that happen when you mine as much, there can be, volcanic eruption. I believe that this area is not so, I don't know enough, but there can also be earthquakes. There can also be a change, climate change. Yeah, because gradually, slowly but gradually, you're mining the place off of something that maintains the temperature of the inner core of the earth. As a part of the, if you mine someone for their red blood cells and you keep doing that, they're going to run out of blood. So, and look at how the position of Saturn there opposing this Uranus and Scorpio. Okay? And so we have an unusual agreement, like we're not going to go to war, all we want is your minerals, so you give us your minerals. And we have Saturn trying to regulate how many, and gold and silver is a metal, and metal is more Mars related. Mineral is more Saturn related. Metal is more to the Mars is iron. Of course, silver is more Venusian. Gold is more solar metal. But this agreement is probably thanks to a certain technology or probably thanks to a certain advancement that allowed to dig for these minerals. And so we have an unusual peace agreement. And an occupation that was avoided and a war that was avoided or diminished by a trade, basically. But the longevity of this agreement, of course, is limited. Okay? And then the question is what happens when the Duke dies? At that time, Casimir focused on internal matters. To strengthen his rule, he recreated the bishopric in Krakow, Warsaw. It's not Warsaw, Warsaw, and directed the new Wawel Cathedral.
During Casimir's rule, heraldry was introduced into Poland, and unlike his predecessors, he promoted landed gently over the Druzina as his base of power. One of his reforms was the introduction to Poland of a key element of feudalism, the granting of fiefdoms to his retinue of warriors, thus gradually transforming them into medieval knights. Okay, so um, this is changing the allocation of land to the Martians. Okay, so land is given to the Martians. Um, a lot of agreements around land, so I don't know his own chart. That would be interesting to see. Um, and so the people who are warriors, the people who are fighting for you now receive land. And they get new resource, new power, because land also means silver and gold. Okay, land means crops, it means silver and gold, it means minerals, it means the water that you have within the land. Okay, if you dig up a well, you have water within the land, and there will be, whether rights to use these things, and these Martian people would have certain rights over the land. What was the extent of the rights? I don't know, but that definitely changed the political structure thanks to mining. So it's a revolution of the power over the metals, the way I see it. This is the closest to how I can delineate that, and we are nearing a breaking point in 1058, but I don't know what happens in 1058. Um, what happened on 6 November 1058? I don't know. Let me see. Saturday. Okay. Christian Fist of the Day. Leonard of Noblack. Winnock. Okay. What is Iltud? Leonard of Noblack. Finnish Swedish Heritage Day. Flag Days in Finland, known as Flag Day. Green March in Morocco. Death of King Gustav Adolphus of Sweden, and Flag Days in Sweden, known as the official Flag Day Sweden. Again, I don't like nothing that I can directly delineate. What was that? No knowledge about this day. This is already 1059 November. Oh, here, November 1058. Let's look at this. Oh, here we are. Orthodox Patriarch of Constantinople, so Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Constantinople from March 1043 to November 58. Figured prominently in the events leading to schism of 1054, the formal separation of Eastern Orthodoxy from Roman Catholicism. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so decentralization in um, Christianity. What is it? But this is in 1054. East-West schism that precipitated the final separation between the Eastern Church, Christian Church, led by Patriarch of Constantinople Michael Cerularius, the Western Church, led by Pope Leo the Fourth. Yeah, the X is 5, or X is 10, so that would be the ninth. X V is 5, and then X is 10, I think. The mutual excommunications by the Pope and the Patriarch of 1054 became watershed in church history. The excommunications were not lifted until 1965, where Pope Paul the this is the Paul the Sixth, right? And the Patriarch Athenagoras the First, following their historic meeting in Jerusalem in 1964. What? I'm looking at. Okay, so this is. Oh, the excommunication. Okay, so this severing of the East and West churches was lasting for almost a millennia. Yeah. So many years. Like only in 1965 did they begin to bridge this gap. And this is happening 3 years before the square. So I don't know the relation of the Byzantine Church to the Roman. Yes, still 4 years before the date that I'm looking for. It can be the beginning of the impact of the square of Pluto Uranus. Church, Christian church. I don't know, decentralization of the church, but I don't see why the church, in terms of just this delineation. What was this decentralization motivated by? Maybe disagreements around sexuality, maybe disagreements around, mining resources, stuff like that. That would be more clear, but I don't know why. Let's there. What? Decided to force the Latin churches in his diocese to use the Greek language. So it was over language and liturgical praxis. Disagreement about the language. Words, but yeah, I don't know how to delineate that. Okay, so let's see. Less control. So he is. Salarius continuing to flex his political muscles, ultimately constraining Constantinople to support Constantine to support the schism. He had less control, however, over Constantine's successor, Emperor Isaac Comnenus, who dethroned Cerularius in. So dethroning, okay, it's a very Plutonian act, in 1058, and drove him into exile. So Cerularius died soon after. So the schism, it was introduced, and then there was, I guess, an attempt to somehow bridge, if I got it correctly, and eventually Cerularius was overthrown, and so it was final. Okay, the severing ties. Scorpio is ruled by Mars. Mars is severing ties, and Pluto in Aquarius is opposing Leo, so opposing rulers, solar Regulian figures. In this case, the severing ties in the church. Now, the church back then was a position of leadership. It was leading countries. So the church and the state were one. And so here we have, before we have the severing ties, in the French Revolution between the church or religion and the state, we have severing ties between streams of religion, okay, the East and the West in the Christianity itself. That's happening during Pluto in Aquarius. So decentralization of
The regime basically, because Aquarius is opposing Leo, and Leo is kingship. Okay, if the patriarch is the king, so Pluto opposition the patriarch is going to be a dissolution, overthrowing the patriarch. Um, and in this case, that is why the church, because the church was just leadership. That was the leadership point of leadership back then. So who are the Regulian figures, in the French Revolution? It was still very tightly in with the church, but because the monarchs, the kings, they were very associated with the church, and so you overthrow them and decentralize the structure so that the state is separated from the church. And you begin to set the fundamental basis for decentralization of forces within a regime. Now we head into another Pluto in Aquarius, and who are the Regulian, okay, the opposite, the Leo figures, the Leo leaders. Who are they today? So back then it was church. Now leaders, who are the leaders that we consider as king? For example, in Israel, many people call Benjamin Netanyahu king, 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 king. You're just setting it up for him to be overthrown when Pluto reaches Aquarius. Okay, if you make of him the sun, then when Pluto opposes the sun, he's overthrown, and then there is decentralization. So whomever we associate as rulerships, as king, as queen, Regulian figures, they are going to have Pluto opposition, so there will have to be rejuvenation in kingship, rejuvenation of Regulian figures, and decentralization, so separation. Okay, Saturn is also separation and confinement. Mars is severing ties. So Uranus and Mars, there is a revolution that causes severing of the ties. Okay, Mars severing ties with, severing connection and severing unity. And with the Saturn ruled Pluto, there is also severing of the structure. Okay. And degeneration of the centralization, especially if it is Regulian figures, if it is solar related, because this is the opposition. So this is how I would give the interpretation. And then 1058, we had the exact square of Uranus in Scorpio and Pluto in Aquarius. And 1058 is like, now this is set in stone. Now this separation is set in stone, and look for how long it lasted. Again, till 1965, they did not manage to bridge the East and the West in terms of the church. Look how fated an event is that. Think about people who talk about the splitting of the severing of civilizations, discussions of the severing of civilizations, and if you hear people talking, mentioning that in relation to the age of air that we are approaching. So think about this event in 1058. There was a severing of the Christian church between the East and the West that lasted for almost, almost 1,000 years. No, yeah. Wait, yeah, almost 1,000 years. More than 1,000 years. More than 1,000 years, because 1058 and then 1965. More than 1,000 years. So, as you hear, what I take from this to nowadays, when people of civilizations, the split of civilizations, the two civilizations, and that brings me to my point when I began to talk about in another more contemporary video. I spoke about what happens in the East and the West, and the Eastification of the West, in the sense that the United States is having very conservative laws, so much so that they break the foundation of the individuation of people, okay, human rights. Women are also human. So, so these rules that are marginalizing half of society, being women and trans women and queer people, not even talking about immigrants and so on and so forth. So the power that United state have, or the legitimacy for the power, was at least the image of human rights, at least the image for rights of property for the individual, okay, freedom of taxation. And as that begins to degenerate, so does the power of the United States as even being able to have a clash of civilizations with the East. So the clash of history is now becoming not just East and West, but there is also a gender aspect to it. Especially with Aries now that Aries was conjuncting the last square we had with Uranus and Pluto. Okay, which I'm not doing talking about this episode, but think what happened there. Before that and in the aftermath. So the Arab Spring, Me Too. And the fundamentals of both the Arab Spring and Me Too was victim blaming. Okay, Arab citizens did no longer accept being accused for their own slavery and their own poverty as the common people. That was the Arab Spring. It's like, no, no, no. It's not because we made wrong choices in our lives. It's because our regime does not account for us as citizens and does not provide for us as citizens. Yet we are asked to provide with our life and sacrifice our everything. No more. Okay? So this liberating aspect, and as we go right now in contemporary, this is Pluto is about to ingress Aquarius, and it will trine Uranus. Okay, so we are at the aftermath of a square. However, the clash of histories and the clash of civilizations that previously existed is now being bridged to the wrong direction, and so a severing of societies is the antithesis to the thesis of unification on the grounds of trying to abolish revolts that stem from individual people wanting rights to be. Okay, to be a woman, to be a queer, to be Chinese living in America, and so on and so forth. And if we take a look at what's happening between, I believe it is Iran and Saudi Arabia. So there are people who are looking at it like, oh my gosh, the bridging of Shia and Sunni. How exciting. And in front of, right on the day that the Ramadan begins, we hear the news of the bridging of the relations between Shia and Sunni. And it looks like, oh my God, what a spiritual, religious, uplifting moment where Islam reunifies. Oh my God, this is just that. This is just that. But on the flip side, because it looks like, oh my God, Islam is reunifying. But if we take a look at Saudi Arabia and we take a look at Iran, we see what's the common denominator. And the common denominator is that Iran is now trying to abolish the revolt of LGBTQ. It's not just women, it's LGBTQ, growing and emerging leadership that wants the liberated Iran that was before 1979. And so there can be two outcomes for that. One, we're going to have a global LGBTQ, not women, not cis women, not trans women. Okay, it's LGBTQ. Global revolt and a severing of ties, a severing of civilization. We're going to have the LGBTQ Islamic, stream. It's not Shia and it's not Sunni. Okay, and I definitely, this definitely could be one of the options. Okay, LGBTQ regime, LGBTQ religion. Okay, that is Islamic. LGBTQ Islam, LGBTQ Christianity, LGBTQ Judaism, okay? LGBTQ pantheism. So this is one of the outcomes that the severing of ties is going to be on that religious basis, and the glory of the Grand Islam will face the difficulty of having to accommodate for the origins of Islam, and the origins of Islam are very feminist. Okay, we have Muhammad granting both the widow, the disabled, the widow, the disabled, I think the old, I don't, or the, I don't remember, and the virgin woman. All of them are wed. All of them have the right to be married. So he married 4 women to show people, and then a man has to be able to provide. And so if you can provide for all these women, then you have status and power. What was later made of it and trying to marry, 12 years old kids for their virginity and marry 4 of these, this is not Islam. Has never been and will never be. Huh? This is the scriptures. Look at your Quran. Um, and this is the word of imams. This is not the word of me. Okay, not imam. Um, and so, and women have their own land and their own individual property. A man cannot ask a woman how much is she making. He cannot have any access to his spouse money. Okay, this is the origin of Islam. I'm not making anything up, and I'm not making anything new. Okay, so you can't oppress women. You can't do that, any of that, whether you're Shia or Sunni, in the spirit of Islam. Impossible. Okay, the Ramadan begins today. This a whole month of fasting and clarifying and purifying and cleansing and meditating and for those who travel to Mecca and traveling, so safe travels. And so when we see this reunification of Shia and Sunna, it seems like the most exciting thing, that it seems like a miracle, like the Messiah is here. We cannot forget what is happening with women in Iran. And we cannot forget that we are heading to a times where gender is having a revolution. Okay, so a woman is having a revolution. What is a woman? Who is a woman? And so on and so forth. Yes, this is Uranus and Taurus today, with Venus approaching it, in giant steps. Um, so here we have, if the restorer, okay, we had the restorers, but then we have the schism, which was a complete set in stone severing of ties, a spread of civilization, spread of rulerships from the East and the West in Christianity. Now there is an attempt approaching the trying to reunify Islam. And so the question is, will we reunify Islam based on treating women and treating the new concept of a woman in the spirit of Islam? Or will we abuse the spirit of Islam in order to have control? Okay, which is the Plutonian theme, his authentic sense of empowerment, authentic power. And a free man, you say it in any language, a free man is a person that doesn't feel the need to oppress another. It's a person that can stand in their own power without overpowering other people or even feeling the need to control others. This is a free man. Okay, what was the word, if we take it to Islam, what was the word of Muhammad? That you should not be affected by the power of women, or should not let the power of, the eroticism or whatnot of women lead you astray, is that you should stand, not that you should oppress women, but that you should stand in your power so much so that you are not feeling even the need to oppress a woman. Because you tend to your own desires. I'm not saying it is in any way easy, right? It is not easy, and sexuality is being used also by somatic, what we call somatic narcissism, where or the loverboy method, for example, in human trafficking. In Netherlands suffers that greatly, where you had someone fall in love with him, a man in this case, with a girl or a teenager or a woman, and then they try to manipulate her out of her money, and they try to manipulate her in a situation where she's feeling, sorry, and so on and so forth, and they try to manipulate her into human trafficking without her choosing. It's not sex positive sex work. It's just enslaving her and using the romanticism and connection and sexuality in what we call love bombing to lead astray. Okay, so the desire to not be led astray and to have the center of gravity within us. It's also sexual liberation that is called for. And sexual liberation where when we're not ashamed of our own sexuality and we can please ourselves, then we are less susceptible to be sexually abused. I'm not talking about violation of sexual boundaries. I'm talking about abuse. Okay, where a need is met that you are ashamed about, and now you feel like this is the person who met this need for you. They are the only source where you can meet this need, and this is contributing to the root of abuse. Yeah, so it's the same notion of saying for men, do not be led by a woman. Also, do not be in the mercy of a woman. Have her have that much power over you. Also, sexual liberation is about do not be. It's about finding your power in the face of people who would try to purposefully or not purposefully take your power away from you as a sexual being, um, in tandem with not doing victim blaming. Okay, so that was just the things that came up while thinking about this, and this leads me to when we're talking about the square happening. We will have a square with Pluto in Aquarius, and Uranus would be in Scorpio. Okay, but we're like it will take some time. I don't know when is the next square. We can see that, but that is where we can have a similar event of severing ties, whether it's on a religious basis, on a rulership basis. That is going to be for a millennia. So, and look, all this happens. The tight conjunction was an hour that is 11:11. So this is the schism. Okay, this is already the Saint Margaret of Scotland, the Queen of Scotland, from 1070 until her death. And she was born in 1058. So the Queen of Scotland, Saint Margaret of Scotland, server costs fundraiser. So if you want to donate to them, then you can donate. As the second wife of Malcolm III, the Queen of Scotland, she reigned from 1070 until her death in November 1093, but she was born in 1058. Now, this is also important to see what did she do, because this is the natal chart. Okay, this square is in the natal chart of this woman, and let's see what did she do in her life that was stemming from her natal chart. So this point in time is also a telos that will lead us into the future. With being born right at the heart of the generation of the Pluto-Uranus square. What did she do? She was a princess of the royal house of Wessex. She brought Anglo-Saxon cultural practices to Scotland and her adopted kingdom. So she changed the religion and the culture. Three of her sons ruled as kings of Scotland, while her own daughter became the Queen of England as the wife of Henry I of England. Margaret was made a saint in 1250 for her services to the Catholic Church and the poor in Scotland. So we also have the history of saints. So if you're working with Saint Margaret, we understand how how politics and religion intertwine, and how a very important political figure now becomes a religious figure. So we begin to deconstruct our faith, and understand that, our saints in some cases are just real people that ruled something, that did something that was important to the people in power at the time, and they receive a religious meaning. So she was born around 1046 and had a royal pedigree. But what is
Why do I have 1058? Okay, when her brother Edgar was recalled to England as a possible heir to the English throne in 1057, Margaret went with him. Okay, and then I don't see 1058 anymore. So, I don't know. 1059, she married Malcolm III of Scotland. Um, so she was not even born in that date. She wasn't born in that. What the heck is going on? Yeah. Oh, she married him in 1058. Okay, so her marriage, she was important for her marriage with Malcolm, and this marriage allowed her to do what the reformations that she wanted to perform in the continent, and therefore she got also the religious position of a saint. Um, Anything more that I see here? No. So that is 1058. Um, Tremendously important time. And let's see if time allows. Let's go for, and we see that the 1059, which we talked about, 1059, April 15, then October 5, 1059, is another phase of this square. This happens in Scorpio and Aquarius. So the schism, and but now let's look at the next one, because the next one happened in 1117, with Uranus being in Cancer and Pluto being in Aries, which will last to 1118 with Uranus being in Leo and Pluto being in Taurus. Now, before I get to that, for sure we will see interesting things, but I want to do some non-linear stuff, and I want to actually go to the most recent. This is the 1800s. Oh, from 2012 on and off to 2015. Okay, the next one will be in 2073, by the way. So we have the trine and then the sextile, the square. So the square would be with Uranus in Capricorn and Pluto in Aries. This is in 2073. But the recent was with Uranus in Aries, conjuncting Aries in Aries, on and off, and Pluto in Capricorn. And people talked about the shift in energy in 2012. I can't help that has something to do with that. So we had 2012, June 24, 2012, then September 19 was the exact, and then May 21, 2013, and then November 1, 2013, April 21, April 2014, and December 15, 2014 to March 17, 2015. Okay, this is the square that will lead. This is the square where we had also the Arab Spring, we had revolts. Um, it will lead to the aftermath of this square will be the Me Too era. So this is where, with Uranus conjuncting Aries, this is where March 17, interesting. This is where something happens that would explode for the next coming, for the next day of Uranus in Aries and Pluto in Capricorn. I'm going to take a little bit of a break and I'm going to come back. Okay, so welcome back. We are doing a study with me live of Uranus square Pluto transits, and immediately I see Pluto square Uranus transits happening in 1932 to 1934. So I talked about the 2012 versus until 2015. Before that, in our century, we had it happening from 1932 with Pluto being in Cancer and Uranus being in Aries until 1934. And so instead of talking about our times, or let's begin with our times. So let's go to the 2000. This is the chart of the exact square between Uranus in Aries here and Pluto in Capricorn. 8th degree of Aries and Capricorn. It was retrograde here. Neptune was retrograde in the beginning of Pisces, Chiron in Pisces, and Saturn in Libra. Okay. At the exact square, we have a sextile from Uranus to Venus. And Venus in Gemini retrograde, so Venus retrogrades here. And we have a square to the Sun. There's a T square, and the Sun is in Cancer. Okay, let's see what it brings. So let's look at 24 June 2012. 24 June 2012. What happened in 24 June 2012? Female athletes will be allowed to compete for Saudi Arabia at the Olympics for the first time. Okay, so we saw the sextile to Venus retrograde, Uranus, Venus retrograde, Venus retrograde in Gemini, so female athletes. And we see here, the rising of women in Saudi Arabia. Now we're heading for the trine. Okay, remember what I said just as I was talking about the ancient, the schism. Okay, and I was talking about Islam. Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood becomes president of Egypt. Okay, and this happens after the Arab Spring. Okay, so at the aftermath of the Arab Spring, if I'm not mistaken, right? Mohammed Morsi is the Muslim Brotherhood. Or I think it's already amidst, because it did last, I think, until 2014, I'm not sure. John Morgan, British ambassador to Mexico, dies at 83. Lonesome George, Pinta giant tortoise and rarest creature in the world, dies at 100. Famous deaths. Maybe is the song Payphone from Maroon 5. Is the British #1 song. St. Cuthbert Gospel. This is April 17, so made to the Scream. So this let's look for some more stuff. What happened? Maybe this one. Moneyball. This movie. By there. Deadlocked. Another famous movie. Watching True Love, The Darkness 2, and 99 Spirits. Video games. So, astrology of video games, if you have an input there. The US president was Barack Obama of the Democrat Party, so we had a black president. At the time, the UK minister was David Cameron, Prime Minister of the Conservative Party. Pope Benedict XVI was leading the Catholic Church. Much more happened that day. Find out below what's going on here. So events, famous deaths, that's historical events. Clashes in Aleppo with rebels, at least 16 soldiers, Syrian soldiers were killed. So in Homs, and here 16 Syrian soldiers were killed. I think it was anything unusual, more than just amidst the Arab Spring, right? And civil war in Syria. War in northwest Pakistan. I like it. It is talking about not war in northwest Pakistan. 7 Pakistani soldiers were killed and 4 or more were missing after they were captured by Taliban militants near Afghan border. Okay, so again, I don't know if it was one of the many things that happened there, or was it a unique moment that steered or triggered events. Fernando Lugo, the outset president of Paraguay, condemns the coup against the citizens and democracy quote that forced him out of the office. So he condemns being overthrown by democracy quote. I don't know what's that. Forced him out of the office. I'm not sure what happened in Paraguay. So we have this overthrowing of old leaders, but not necessarily democratization just yet. Ulster Bank has opened branches on Sunday for the first time since the ongoing payments crisis continued to affect the bank is not abating. So Ulster Bank, financial the financial decision overthrows, let's say, a traditional or religious decision to close on Sundays. The tropical storm Debbie continues to form off Florida's coast, bringing heavy rains and high winds to the area. The two tornadoes are triggered by the outbands of the storm, one of which is near Sarasota. Again, I don't relate that directly to this one. I don't relate directly to the events. Rescue effort overdue after a boat capsized close to Christmas Island. More than 90 people remain missing. So we have to remember that this happens while Pluto is sextiling Neptune. And so these missing people in the ocean is more a Neptunian thing rather than the Uranus-Pluto, in my opinion. Famous deaths, so... What else have we here? This calendar, movies. So we have Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol, The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, Ted. These are the movies. Killer Joe. What especially I noticed was the notion of women competing in sports in Saudi Arabia. So the rise of women and the overthrowing of old regimes that became stagnant during the Arab Spring. let's see what else do we have from this, because this is the first. Okay, this is the first square. It happens in the midst of the Arab Spring. Now let's look at. So we have September 19, but I want to. Well, September 19 they are direct, so let's look at what happens there. And this is the chart, so it happens at 6 degrees Aries and 6 degrees Capricorn. Mercury is opposing Uranus, so there can be some media crisis, laws, changing of laws around that time. And it's this applying to T squared, this Pluto and Uranus, with the moon being in Scorpio, sextile in Pluto, or separating from sextile to Pluto. And the sun applying to this T square from Virgo. Let's see what happens. So this is September 19, 2012. So this is June, and now we are to September. So 19 September. And this is the exact aspect. So things can happen a couple of days before, a couple of days later, to a couple of weeks before and later. Okay, it's the entire on and off square. It happens for a couple of years. What happened on September 19, 2012? 9 people are killed and 20 wounded in a car bombing in Peshawar, Afghanistan. And yet again, I don't know if it is just something that happened every once in a while there, or if it ignited some more important events. Will I Am, Hall of Fame, We Are Never Getting Back Together, Taylor Swift. Generation Z, Dragon, Virgo. Okay, not seeing anything more here, but so there we have this car bombing. Syrian opposition. So this is armed conflict. So Syrian civil war. Infiltration from Turkey to Syria. Car bombing in Pakistan. Business and economy. Teachers go back to work in Chicago after the union leadership votes to suspend its strike while the membership reviews a tentative pact with Mayor Rahm Emanuel. So this is education. Again, I don't know if it's something that happens every year or is it something special about there. Czech Republic temporarily imposes a ban on hard liquor after a spate of deaths related to bootleg hard alcohol poisoning. So temporary ban on alcohol. I don't think it's related directly to anything there. Alcohol, again, it's more the Neptune thing, because alcohol is the Neptune thingy, and poisoning of alcohol is basically Pluto squaring sextile in Neptune. And Neptune had a hard aspect or aspect with Saturn, but this is from the Neptune point of view. Here we're talking about the Uranus Pluto. Environment and health. Cabinet of Yoshihiko Noda reverses a pledge made by the Japanese government earlier this week to end reliance on nuclear power by 2030s. Okay, so they want to denucleify the place. Not words that I would take, I would take it with a grain of salt, huh? But this happens again in Japan. They reverse a pledge made by Japanese government to end nuclear power. Woo! Cabinet of Yoshihiko Noda. Okay, this is important because this is leading to the trine, which is leading to the opposition of Uranus-Pluto. Okay, so they begin to revoke. This is the square. They want to take back a decision to denucleify Japan. Yikes. Um, I don't think any further explanation is needed. This happens in um, 2012. Japan is regaining nuclear power, no longer committing to not rely on nuclear power. And I don't mean about energizing cities, which is also causing nuclear leakings, cancers, and whatnot. Okay, nuclear energy is nuclear energy. It leaks. Pluto, Neptune, nuclear energy leaking. Um, so even in the best of cases, there still is a leak. It still causes deaths. It's alteration to the DNA, cell degeneration and mutation, and so on and so forth. And if you know people who were who carried in their body the residues of nuclear activity, I knew a person that carried it does cause mutation, and the person is dealing with these mutations, so that can limit the or change or make it more difficult to function properly, because your back needs to deal with that and align your back, align your legs, and so on and so forth. Um, and of course, tendency to ailments and whatnot, so fear from that. Um, this is big, okay? And this is not 1,000 years ago. This happens in 2012. Now we are 10 years, 11 years after that, heading towards a trine between Pluto and Uranus. And we know a trine is a trine between two squares. So the trine is in 2026. The next word 2073. In between them, we have an inconjunct, we have an opposition, we have another inconjunct. So yeah, international not that Japan is the only thing that we're worried right now, but look, even Japan, right? Even Japan. International relations. Senkaku Island dispute. A man turns himself into police after throwing smoke bombs into premise of the Chinese consulate general Fukuoka, in Fukuoka, Japan. Jeiji Press via Yomiuri Shimbun. So someone turned himself in for throwing smoke bombs into the premises of the Chinese consulate in Japan. So China, Japan. China, Japan. It's being triggered again. China, Japan. Police in Hong Kong arrests a man accused of attacking a Japanese couple near the Chimsa maybe, pomegranate on Monday. Okay. And here again, I don't know if it is something that is casually happening between Japan and China, or is this a special event, a special series of events. Demonstrations in Taipei gather before Taiwan Legislative Yuan, building, chanting anti-Japanese slogans and burning flags. Protesters in Beijing surround a car transporting U.S. Ambassador to China, Gary Loka, and attack it as it tried to make its way to the gate of Japanese embassy. So, a lot of tension between China and Japan, with Taiwan in the middle. And not something that we don't remember from, to a lesser extent, the 30s. So this coming up. And again, China, Japan, Beijing, politics. It's funny that now it's written politics, huh? The U.S. Justice Department. I'm sorry, this is so West-centric that, like, I literally had to laugh. Like, all of this was not politics. Politics. Now let's talk politics. U.S. Justice Department Inspector General finds that the agency's Operation Fast and Furious created a significant danger to public safety. What is Fast and Furious? It sounds like a movie name. Um, it is a movie name. The investigation also finds that Eddie Jen Erich H. Holder Jr. had no prior knowledge to of the operation. What is this operation? Letting guns walk. Gun walking. What? The gun walking scandal. A tactic used by Arizona Attorney Office and Arizona Field Office in the United States Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF. ATF sounds like something you invest in. Which ran a series of sting operations between 2006 and 2011 in the Tucson and Phoenix area. The ATF purposely allowed licensed firearms dealers to sell weapons to illegal straw buyers, hoping to track the guns to Mexico, to Mexican drug cartels and arrest them.
Oh my gosh. So we are now at the aftermath of the exact square between Mars and Neptune. And remember when I talked about the predictions for the Mars Neptune, I talked about it could be the gun that you wanted to buy, but eventually you didn't buy and ended up being a spying device. So this is literally a study case, gun walking, where they wanted to allow for trade in weapon so that they can trace the weapon and get to the cartels that it's heading, which is a very smart, it's a very smart tactics.
But apparently it had some problems. So let's see what were the problems. They were done under the umbrella of Project Gunrunner. Sorry, this is so funny. The names. A project intended to stem the flow of firearms into Mexico by interdicting, interdicting, interdiction, removing of an office to perform his normal. Okay, so removing of straw purchasers and gun traffickers within the United States. So it's allowing them to sell illegal weapon. That's what I get from here. The Jacob Chambers case began in October 2009 and eventually became known in February 2010 as Operation Fast and Furious, after agents discovered Chambers and the other suspects under investigation belonged to a car club. Okay, so weapons. These are the weapons. So they tracked the weapons. Was allowing these purchases to continue to track firearms. They were transferred to high-level traffickers and key figures in Mexican cartels, with the expectation that this would lead to their arrest and dismantling of the cartels. Now, I can see how that can go wrong. Now you got
U.S. guns. That if you it's like, yes, you can be invisible and observe, but think about channeling. Okay, if somebody interferes with you, can do one thing is you can deflect it, protect your energy. You can intermingle with it and get to know this energy. Then now you have a clear channel. It's like, you wanted to invade my energy, good luck, you open the portal to your soul. And with I don't understand a lot in spying, but if you put something to spy on the gun, and that something is related through a web, get through the internet, through I don't know what, then you can hack into whoever tries to spy on you. Not taking that into, and that is also what we're dealing with when we talk about not just the Pluto Neptune sextile, but Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, mass surveillance or mass hacking, mass exposure can work in both ways.
While federal prosecutor Emory Harley allegedly told the agents they had no choice but to let guns walk because agents lacked probable cause to arrest buyers, the tactic of allowing obvious straw purchases to give guns to criminal organizations was questioned during the operation by ATF agent fields and cooperating licensed gun dealers. Fast and Furious, the largest gun walking probe, the ATF monitored the sale of 2,000 firearms, of which only 710 were recovered as of February 2012. Okay, so these are things that can go around. Like, you know where they are, but then you don't. Now, if you buy a legal weapon, of course you test it for surveillance. And if you use it to surveil, you know, of course you can either discharge, and then you have a point where you have the surveillance device, and the whole machinery is being, you know, if you thinking about the stealing cars, okay, America have that as well, or anywhere around. It's like the cars that you see that, you know, one door, the right door looks like from this brand, the left from this brand, and there's something not. It looks like it's compartmentalized and being reassembled from many different cars. You're creating a new car basically. You can do that with a weapon, right? I mean, I don't understand in that, but common sense. And so that can be, you know, while initially like, oh, this is a very cool idea. Yes, but of course they test for that, and then they can discharge or rebuild the weapon, and so you can't track anything. And now they got the weapons. So I guess that was the criticism. Number of straw purchases have been arrested and indicated, however, and also depending on the laws of your country, if you don't want to expose, when you expose this operation, then you have exposed the tactic for surveillance on guns, anyone, because now you've exposed the tactic. It's no longer hidden, and as long as this gun was not used, as long as no offense was committed, and there is no reason for an offense to be committed because of the legitimacy of power, okay? Having weapon is not so that you will use them, but so that you won't have to use them. Okay, you show your gun so that you won't have to shoot it. But then there is the dissonance of, you know, arming yourself, setting the stage for shooting these guns. So as long as no offense, no gunshot was shot, and who do they shoot? Well, they will shoot refugees. They will shoot the people that a lot of regimes have the interest to get rid of, you know, tax-wise and welfare-wise. So for that to happen, they would have to do like a mass shooting or something. They're not stupid. They're not going to do it. And that, I guess, is what happened with this operation. By the ADF being found at the crime scene of both sides of the Mexico-United States border and the scene where the United States border was killed in December 2010. The gun-walking operation became a public in the public of Terry's murder. So you expose the technique. Now it is known that they have to be careful from that. Revelations of gunwalking led to a controversy in both countries, and diplomatic relations were damaged. Again, United States and surveillance, love and marriage. United States, I believe it's every country, but just because, you know, the spies that managed to expose that were from United States, then we know about United States. I don't think United States is any different in this technique. But, you know, from the Mexican perspective, it's like, okay, you're surveilling guns coming to our country. How do we know you're not surveilling water bottles coming to our country? Okay, and so on and so forth. So this is... So this created significant danger to public safety. So this is being judged. So it's like a judgment day for these operations about guns. So Aries, guns, Uranus, unusual use of guns, Pluto in Capricorn. So this unusual method was from the plutocracy, okay, from the regime. And while it sounds like a good idea, to me even it sounded like a good idea in the beginning, if the structure of the Plutonian structure that you're ordering from, okay, Pluto and Capricorn, needs to be rejuvenated in self, you're not at the position to fight crime. Because you have to do cleaning your room, right? You have to look within and look within the structure and what needs to change in your own structure, because if these Mexican, crime, like people, criminals, um, are um, are buying these guns to protect themselves from being human trafficked. If they try to cross the border and get a better job, then what can you do? You need to look at the structure of your own country. Um, but also, if the structure of your own country is unhealthy, then you're not very sustainable to the unhealthy situation, like an immune system. Okay, if your immune system is not strong, it's easy to get a virus. So, if your regime is not supportive of marginalized society and the rejuvenation, okay, cellular rejuvenation inside the structure that you build is not sustainable, then you're more likely to be invaded, to have crime, and to hurt or damage your diplomatic relations. Because how does the United States look in giving guns to people and putting some surveillance on them that you can't recover? Like less than half of these were recovered eventually, even though it sounded like a good idea. Okay, so they're not stupid for doing that, but eventually that proved out to not be helpful. Why am I looking at the desktop? Okay. Anything more? So a lot of armed stuff. We have Aries is the individual, okay? And when I took a look at what happened between Japan and China, there were assassinations, okay? There were individual people bombing. Yeah, and Uranus is explosive, so individual people bombing, and they target key figures, individual people in a big Plutonian structure. That was the Japan-China kind of effect, and so Uranus is the individual. It's the individual. If we think even in terms of the Arab Spring, it's the individual that set themselves on fire, and that becomes viral, and now it steers a revolution. Okay, it's the individual event, the power of the person, of the individual, to create a societal structure, rejuvenation, and change. Okay, the power of soul figures. Even if later in 2017 we will see the Me Too. Me Too consisted of a series of leaders, women, actresses, researchers, whatnot, who said, "This happened to me. This is my story." Okay, and now they were believed, and now a lot of things had to change, and so on and so forth. So it's the power of the individual action, terrorist or not, to steer up a revolution. Okay? That was the person, the innovator, the frontier person, the Martian woman. That says, "This is my story. This happened to me. Who did that? This person in that structure." Okay, and this is very important because it took very long, even after the square, to sue the institution. Because it began as, "Oh, this is the person that hurt me. Who is this person? The dean of that university, the director of that company, the producer of that company, the agent of that company." Okay? The general in that unit, huh? The prime minister, the parliament member. They did. My father, my parent, my this, my that. Okay, my uncle, who happened to be like not my story. Yes, this author, this famous author, this Nobel-winning prize. Okay, they did so and so sexually. That is not okay. And so the power of the individual to say, "This individual that is over there, this way up there, they're not okay. This is what they did to me." Huh? And that was uh, another thing that it's people targeting people, and the differences in power and structural power, while the innovation power of Aries, that could be through social media, through bombing, because a suicide bombing is also Uranus, is very much Uranus, and armed people, the armed individual, the explosive individual, the rebellious individual, the blog post on the social media becomes explosive, becomes revolutionary, and they target the name.
Every person has a name. Okay? It's that prime minister. It's that person. It's that person. And so it begins to be like assassination in a way. Okay? And sometimes forced. Okay? Sometimes you just say, okay, this happened to me. This is my case. This is what I can talk about. When you talk about your case, of course, you say where it happened, how it happened, when it happened, and already people can understand who is the name, even if you don't say it, right? Um, However, as Pluto is progressing in Capricorn, we understand this is the structure. Okay? This is the structure. And now Uranus in Taurus. What we're heading for is the trine when Pluto is going to be in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini. Yeah, so it's another form of revolution that actually tries to, at least for a while, create the potential of how is the potential of peace looking. There are still destructions. There are still bad things happening. Now let's look at the next date, and that is May 21, 2013. It's the next exact square of Uranus and Pluto. Um, mm, mm, mm. Uranus, Pluto, Pluto in Capricorn, retrogrades, Uranus direct, 11 degrees, Capricorn and Aries, respectively. And this exact aspect is sextiled by Venus and Mercury in Gemini. And the moon applies to oppose it from Libra. So something is about to happen. Yeah. Let's see. 21st May. Universal time is 20 May. So let's see, 21 May. Perhaps there's something about the dates that I'm looking at that I need to reestablish, but let's see. Let's look at universal time is 20 May, so let's look at 20 May 2013. The afternoon of May 20, 2013, a large, extremely violent EF5 tornado ravaged through Moore, Oklahoma, and adjacent area with peak winds estimated at 210 MPS, 340 kilometers, killing 24 people, plus 2 indirect fatalities and injuring 212 others. So tornado, peak winds, okay, it's a natural disaster, but for the Aries, I'm looking not for the wind because it's fire element. I'm looking for volcanic eruption. I'm looking for maybe earthquake, volcanic eruption. Um, Pluto Capricorn, it is the land, it's mountain area, so I would need to see where is the volcanic eruption, because it's an important event, but I cannot associate it with this square, um, because I don't have any astrological reasoning to do so, unless you can argue with me, of course, and write a reaction video or something like that. Yeah. Okay. May 20, 2013, 123 people are killed and 288 are injured in a continued wave of insurgency. Insurgency? Oh, okay, so militant collision in Iraq. That seems important. So military, Uranus, Mars ruled Uranus, so that's military doing some revolutionary something. Collision, so it can be the army is colliding with the regime or the two armies collide. I have no idea.
Two people are killed and 20 are injured after a hot air balloon crashes in Cappadocia, Turkey. Hot air balloon. Hot air balloon. It's Aquarian, but I don't know why. Okay, let's just move on for a second. Can't hold us. Such a nice song. Get lucky. Okay. I don't know what did I just see. Let's do the 21st of May. So this is 21st of May. What happened? Creole King received Library of Congress Gershwin Prize at the White House. Singer-songwriter. So this is a single person being honored in a big structure at the White House. Interesting. So famous deaths. So famous deaths in the music industry. Okay. And not much that I see here. Yeah. Because this is calendar, but press debriefing. Prime Minister spokesman, the initials are PMS. It's just funny. Answered here, David Nicholson. Let's see that. This is International Monetary Fund reports an equal marriage. Okay. Equal marriage. The Prime Minister echoed the Secretary of State of Health Jeremy Hunt's comment from earlier today. Asked the Prime Minister shares David Nicholson's view on occasions where NHS has failed patients and families. International Monetary Fund, IMF reports. PMS said the Treasury would respond. Equal marriage bill. They were expected to vote on equal marriage. So civil marriage, perhaps, that's the point. So more rights in marriage. Again, we have this aspect with Venus and Mercury in Gemini. Is that, what is equal marriage? Is that like gay marriage? Equal marriage, what is the equal marriage bill? And I think 2015 we had certain countries acknowledging gay marriage. Couples. Oh, okay. Again, Venus and Mercury in Gemini aspecting this square. So we have an act of acknowledging or the possibility of marriage. House of Commons in England and Wales. Yeah, civil partnership. So change of the marriage laws, a revolutionary act. Okay, this is a manifesting change in the structure regarding marriage of same-sex people. So Uranus, Aries is individuation. Aries in Aries, Uranus in Aries. So who is a man, who is a woman, two men, two women. And then this aspect by Venus and Mercury, so agreements around relationships, so this is marriage, and same-sex agreements, okay, so women, men, and so on and so forth. That was one of the manifestations. So we have gay rights in the structure, so the structure becoming more gay-friendly. Right at the square, 2014, April 21. Pluto is squaring Uranus, and this is in a square shape. with Uranus opposing Mars in Libra and Pluto opposing Jupiter in Cancer. So Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Here, the square shape is, utmost tension. It's an equilibrium of equal powers at war. Okay? So this is, there's tension between everybody, but there's an equal level of tension between everybody. And so there's a potential for alchemy. Um, Mars opposing Uranus from Libra. So Mars is its fall, not fall, but detriment, and yeah, fall. And Jupiter at its exaltation. Some religious tensions, I predict. Because of Libra, it can be to do with relationships or international struggles. I believe the United States to be a focal point too. I think the United States was having a Jupiter return at the time. Moon in Capricorn. Not really aspecting this square. So let's look at 21 April 2014. 21 April 2014. What happened? So 180th Boston Marathon. So we have new champions. Um, famous death. LCD displays. Invented LCD displays and died at 77. Happy by Pharrell and Hideaway by Kiza are the number one in the charts. We have on February 18 that year, we have a revolution in Ukraine. The missing flight, March 8, so I guess that is the missing flight is probably Neptunian triggered. Revolution in Ukraine. Let's take a look at this because we see it playing a part, right? This is Kiev. During late 2013 and early 2014, protests in Ukraine erupted after country's president Viktor Yanukovych refused to sign a new treaty with the European Union in favor of one with Russia. The protests widened in scope dramatically to general anger towards the government, corruption, and human rights abuses. Protesters were centered on Independence Square in Kiev, which became known as Euromaidan, European Square. On 18 February 2014, protests turned into a revolution with widespread clashes at the square. This would lead to the ouster of Yanukovych on 22 February to the present crisis in Crimea and eastern Ukraine. So we have the beginning of a beautiful enmity. And that is, of course, extremely cynical. Yeah. So 18th of February 2014, Ukrainian Revolution of 2014 begins as protests, riot police, and unknown shooters take part in violent events at capital Kiev, culminating 5 days after the ouster? It's like oyster. That's not helpful. Give me the meaning. Okay, of President, probably outthrowing of President Viktor Yanukovych. So, a meaningful political event which accompanies us to today. With Uranus in Taurus, we see how that played out, right? Aries Uranus, it was internal revolution in Ukraine, already in relation to Russia. Now, what happens in Crimea? There are certain minorities, Jews amongst, in Ukraine, at the Crimea region, that were treated more respectfully by Russians than by Ukraine. It's a problem of treating marginalized society with respect. And those people who were disrespected and received more respect in Russia, You ask them where you're from, they tell you, I am Russian, I'm from Crimea. Um, Whereas Crimea was the territory of Ukraine at the time. And so this created, and this is so important for every country, like treat your marginalized societies right. Your marginalized, you treat your people right. All of your people, regardless of sex, religion, or whatnot, or neurodivergence or whatnot, okay? Because here we have marginalized societies that are fearing for their lives in their own country. Who would they ally with? Okay, all another country or another empire has to do is say, oh, we're going to treat you a bit better. Now they're with them, you know? Treat your marginalized societies right. That's, and, and as Uranus delves into Taurus, now the entire Ukraine is at war. So it's not just internal, it's not just individuals, marginalized, people who have identity that is unusual. Okay, Uranus in, no, yeah. Uranus in Aries is the sense of self. So people whose sense of self is, they are maybe outcasts or individual outcasts, or it can be a bit anarchistic or revolting. And eventually, if you don't account for them in your agenda, they're going to bring up a lot of misery on your country because they're just going to look for who treats them well. If nobody treats them well, it's a world war. Um, and not by the merit of these people, because everybody would apply. They would make, oh, we promise you, we'll treat you a bit better. Okay, now we're with you. Okay, that now, Crim is with Russia. Okay, then we promise you, we treat you a bit better. Who are you? Romania. Okay, now Crim is with Romania. And we promise you, we'll treat you a bit better. Who are you? Americans. Now Crim is American. It's no problem. Okay, you just have to treat them with respect. If they're not fearing for their life, if they got food, if they got education, if they got a place to stay, if they got a place that the meaning and purpose, they stay with the country. There's nothing to apply to. But if you mistreat people, of course. And so you have all kinds of large forces competing and trying to, to kind of scoop what they can by, and this is also what happens with terror when we talked about terror and how disempowering a place financially breeds terror, because whoever provides you for your daily meal, you're gonna treat them with more respect than the other person. But if the person who provides you for your daily meal begins to be abusive to you as well, it's only a matter of time until somebody will provide for a better meal, and then off you go. Bye bye. Just treat people with respect. Um, the protests widened in scope dramatically. Yeah, so corruption and human rights abuse. So, yeah. This is 2014. So here we have big collision. That will escalate. Okay, so this square is the spark of something that will escalate. And as the moon will begin to trigger, when the moon crosses Aries, then of course stuff are further reignited. So this is December 15, 2014, probably the ignition. And 2015, March 17. So we're going to go to March 17, 2015. This is the final square. This is where we begin to say goodbye to Pluto square Uranus in Aries. Mars here is with Aries, I believe, and Uranus with Aries. This is worth checking for the asteroids. So, Aries. That's Aries. A bit before, after Mars. And we have Keto here. Okay, so this is a very special event because look at the nodes. Okay, Rahu is with Libra. Now, 2024, we're going to have Rahu in Aries. Already the April eclipse, okay, the April 20 eclipse is already triggering this axis. Okay, it's in Aries, 29 degree of Aries, the anaretic degree, if I'm not mistaken. What happened in 2015 is going to be reignited and flipped and reversed. So we're going to want to look at what the eclipses were. When were the eclipses? Let's look at the eclipses of 2015. So this is the eclipse of April 20. Let's just have a glimpse of the upcoming eclipse. And the upcoming eclipse is on the 29th degree of Aries. The node is still, the node is still in Taurus, but the axis is already triggered into Aries, and we have the new moon and blah blah blah. Now I want us to look at 2015. That's a very specific way to do that, but let's do it. So March 23rd, 2000. This is 2016. I want to see 2015. Thank you, Val. We had March 20. The eclipse was in Pisces, but where were nodes? Yes. The eclipse was on the 29th degree in Pisces on 20 March 2015. Okay, just days before the exact Uranus-Pluto square. You can see they're still in a square on the, it's on the degree. It's not on the minute, but it's on the degree. And this is 20 March 2015. 29th degree, the anaretic degree of Pisces, but Rahu is in Aries. Rahu is deep in Aries already. And then on April 4, 2015, we'll already have the eclipse with Rahu, okay, on the 14 degrees of Aries, entering a series of eclipses with Ketu in Aries, beginning in 20th March 2015. Now, the nodes reverse every 9 years and return every 18 years. This is 9 years or so, 18 years or so, okay? It takes about a year and a half, 2 years for the nodes to do their thing, to go about the sign. They're always retrograde. So here we had Rahu here with the moon in Libra. And so Libra was where we were heading. Ketu with Aries. Now, what we're having is a series of eclipses with the reversal of the nodes, with Rahu in Aries and Ketu in Libra. Okay. Obviously, what happened 9 years ago, 2015, okay? In 2024, it will be 9 years. What happened 9 years ago, we're having a bit of a reignition, replay, something is going on, but now Rahu is with Aries and Ketu is with Libra. And so If we look at what happened in 2015 and around these eclipses and around this square of Pluto Uranus, we can better understand what is going to happen in 2024, to a lesser extent 2023, 2024, and 2025 even. Yeah. So we had an eclipse in Virgo, September 13, 2015. Yeah, this is in Virgo, but with the nodes on the Libra Aries axis still. I believe it was the final eclipse on that axis in 28 September 2015 with nodes on 0 degree Libra and 0 degree Aries. So yes, now we are having a reversal of the nodes. Important time to look at. Yeah, this is the square. And this is 17 March, so it's just 3 days before a very significant eclipse relative to the series of eclipses that we are looking at in 2023, 2024, and 2025. What happened at 15 March and what happened at 20 March? Because around this time, 17 March, let's begin with 17 March. It's already in the shade of an eclipse. March 2015. What happened? So, English cricketer dies at 90, so sports. Taylor Swift. Sorry! Oh my god! Shaw Taylor. I think Taylor Swift had a hit at that then. Right? What was the music? No. Taylor Swift.
You know, this is funny because I seen on Facebook there is just sudden news flashes of all kind of like Justin Bieber died, Angelina Jolie. It's like fake news of people's death. So this is just so weird. Um,
Love Taylor Swift, but yeah. Shaw Taylor, British actor and television presenter, died. They both died at 90. But I don't see any more the unstoppable gentle giant. So gentle giant to me is it's a dog breed. So Newfoundlands, um, but here they use it in a different way. Set. This was St. Patrick's Day. Um, can I see like news or something? All news. The little general arrives at the Stadium of Light. Okay. A royal dog show. Right, royal dog show. Russia's Supreme Court loss. Is this? No, it is. I'm looking. He was weird, but I'm looking at this news like that. Why am I getting something from? I don't know. What happened in March 17? Okay, a magnetic storm commenced on St. Patrick's Day, with the arrival of at Earth of coronal mass ejection.
oh, so the solar. Okay, you know the effect of the coronal mass ejection. I think it is when the sun has its like parts of the sun begin to like go away from the planet, and whenever that happens, we have a series of changes of timelines on a mundane level, on a spiritual level, and so on and so forth. Sudden commencement nearly 50 NT for main phase, so the sun. Um, I don't see anything. Let's go to March 20. Like, this is a very important event, but I'm looking for the manifestation on a mundane level.
So the solar eclipse, yes. Thank you. I'm looking for the news. Death. So death of heart attack. So Eva Barros, Australian Salvation Army officer, dies. American actor, American cartoonist. Um, a lot of deaths, famous deaths, because it's an eclipse, so it's expected. Um, but I don't see anything. Why don't we have news? We don't have news. I don't believe that nothing happened. Why are we like? Is there something that keeps us from finding the information? Because it doesn't seem like that's all the information that we have. Like, is it something like, no, you're not going to have to go to this and that paper, this and that? And, like, why don't we find all these things? Are they somehow blocked? Are they somehow. Is it like a missing information that's on purpose? I don't know. We researched that, and that was not the case with the internet. It's so weird, right? Um, what happened in the world? Let's do March 2015, maybe way in the world. Current events. Thank you. Blah 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 blah. Okay. Swiss bank US. That's that's now. Yes, that's now. Uh, ah, nothing happened on March 2015. Really? What the heck is going on? Why are they erasing history? Let's see that. Just notice how difficult it is to find this information on Google in a simple search. This is like the most classic search. What was in the news in that and that date? What was in the news in that and that date? Like, that used to be so easy. Here are key events in world news month of March. Thank you. With help from Iran, Iraq begins major campaign against ISIS. This was March 2nd. Um, Israeli Prime Minister makes controversial speech to the. Was that the duck one? Netanyahu, okay. Um, he wants the US to not negotiate with Iran. He calls the negotiations to get Iran to freeze its he calls it nuclear program a bad deal. Like, if we are to think that Iran will not rely on nuclear power, yes, it is in a sense, but then, there are other countries with nuclear power that, that's. In his speech, he says the deal that could well threaten the survival of my country will not prevent Iran from having and using nuclear weapon. To the contrary, it will all but guarantee nuclear arms in Iran, which, whether we like, whether we agree with the regime or not, or what he did in the regime, the statement is the truth value of one. This is true. Um, Boko Haram pledges allegiances to ISIS. Yes, not surprising. So alliances between terrorists. Um, they want the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. This is ISIS. So Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. That's the initials of ISIS. Um, U.S. Senator warns Iranians officials against signing nuclear deal. This is already March 9. So this is the whole sanctions against Iran developing. So nuclear power, new countries and Iran, Aries, Iran, uh, are making huge steps towards developing nuclear weapon or nuclear energy. Okay, it doesn't matter what does this nuclear energy does. It leaks. It makes people get cancer and energy and mutation. This is not just true with Iran. It's like everywhere. Um, with the stroke of a pen, okay, saying that the agreement can be reviewed. Pen. Okay. Um, and the nuke can be exploded with the press of a button, but um, yes. So this was the end of the Pluto square with Uranus in Aries Capricorn, next to Aries. Um, and now Iran is becoming energetically weaponized. So Likud wins Israeli elections. So this was March 17, 2015. Okay, something happened. Why did I have to go all this way to find out what happened? So there were elections in Israel, March 17, 2015. Likud won, leading to the election had him behind. So he won the election. His party takes only 300. Well, that is more um, Zionist Union Alliance, led by Herzog, wins 24 seats. So Herzog later became a president. No Palestinian state will be established while he is at the office. Whenever somebody says that, I already see him signing the peace agreement. Like, this is what usually happens in international politics. A vow that insulted Arab citizens and alienated some political allies. Then he backtracks from the statement. Okay, the usual. A gunman opened fire at Tunis Museum March 18. So, bombing in Tunis. Um, ISIS claims responsibility for mosque attacks as violence escalates in Yemen. Okay. So there are all these things still happening in the background. Um, but we'll definitely meet the opposition. So ISIS takes control of Yemen, takes control of Syria, takes control of Iraq, and all these things happening while the regimes of these countries do not turn to their marginalized societies. So this is already, if they're all business news, U.S. news, science, some science. Let's see. Thank you. Cyclone hits Vanuatu, so that's natural for shade eclipses to increase, I guess. The death toll from the cyclone is 11. German jetliner carrying 150 passenger crashes on March 24, so this is only 4 days after the eclipse. Plane crash. I don't know, but that also happened at the time. So this is what I see. So we have the rise of terror attacks, shifting of regimes, single people singling out single people, so assassinations, Um, okay, the right of the individual and the rights of the people in power collide drastically. We do have gay marriage being granted amidst that in England. So yeah, and of course Ukraine. Okay, the big one was Ukraine with that square we saw in the sky with Mars and Jupiter, and Pluto and Uranus. That was Ukraine, and that's still Ukraine. So I guess there would be attempts to create some sort of um, unusual agreements during the trine period. Um, but new severing of ties happened there that continue to affect world politics and to be a focal point of conflict uh, and perhaps a Cold War. So I'm going to end this episode and yeah, upload it somewhere. These were just, two glimpses at the square. We also, we did, and I did another episode about the trine, and we are also needing to discuss the inconjunct, the 150 degrees, and the opposition and the conjunction. So, see you in my next episode. Bye bye.